Okay. The concept of VTubers and VTubing as a whole is a concept that I wholeheartedly enjoy and indulge in, and that I find to be truly enthralling. VTubing is a concept where people, to put it bluntly, become anime and is made up of anime girls and anime boys with their own distinctive talents and unique characteristics to tell them apart, and do a assortment of things. Some sing, some play musical instruments, some cook, and some are living memes, and some really like feet, and some don't do much but talk about nuts. But you know what? There are many that I respect and admire. VTubers, what a marvel of science. Although recently I've come across a rather fascinating anomaly while I was watching one of my favorite anime boys stream. It's something that is widely known and accepted, but no one truly breaks it down and attempts to understand why it is. That anomaly being why are all 2D VTubers paralyzed in most aspects except their head and occasionally are able to bunny hop like a chess piece. Well, let's break it down and figure out for science. And solely for science. So, we could get technical and go over the concept of VTubers and the process that goes into rigging a model design and how it is fundamentally impossible to incorporate dynamic movements into a 2D format, but I feel that is way too easy of an explanation. Surely there has to be more of a better explanation to this kerfuffle of a concept than just that. Surely. Personally, I believe this conundrum to be rather simple yet overlooked, and this is all speculative, but I think I've managed to pull back the veil on VTuber paralysis. At first I was going on the notion that VTubers were incapable of any kind of physical movement below their neck, lest it be the kinetic energy flowing through their body due to the bopping of their head, often referred to as jiggle physics, paralyzed completely. Due to this, I started researching if it was potentially due to them being two-dimensional, and factoring the fact that they are suddenly capable of dynamic movement when they make the transition and turn into three-dimensional VTubers. I assumed that maybe they only had half a brain, being a 2D VTuber consisting of the frontal part of the brain and excluding the back part of the brain, mainly because the back part of the brain is responsible for movement. Let me be the first to say I was foolish. There are far too many flaws in this hypothesis for that to be true. For example, some VTubers have been able to bunny hop and cross their legs, clearly displaying movement and disproving them being completely paralyzed. They have their full brain no matter what dimension they're in, mind you. The only thing about it is it might be perceived differently in accordance to the dimension it is being perceived in. Basically, the 2D brain looks like 2D to three-dimensional creatures, but it looks normal, per se, to two-dimensional entities. VTubers can also see for the most part, and the back part of the brain helps with sight. I was perplexed. Befuddlement intensified even more when I factored in the concept of VTubers being in the 3D world while inhibiting the 2D world. How are they able to coexist in two different planes of existence? Well, that'll have to be something for another video. It seems they are partly paralyzed in the 2D world from the neck down, and not anyway paralyzed in the 3D world. That's interesting. However, as stated previously, and bizarrely enough, they are able to perform certain movements on rare occasions, albeit very minimalistic, and there have been some circumstances in which they can feel sensations and pain in the extremities affected with paralysis, even if those extremities aren't functioning in things such as movement. This is extremely detrimental, as this allows me to reason the paralysis VTubers have is incomplete, or in other words, allows them to feel sensations and move the affected limbs at rare occasion. Factoring in the limbs affected consisting of everything below the head leads me to assume they are quadriplegics, and my original hypothesis, it would seem, was correct, albeit misguided, and it's that the brain is affected, thus allowing incomplete paralysis to take place. Paralysis of any kind is usually linked to the nervous system, and the spine is a affected part that, when unharmed, is sort of like a wire that the brain uses to, in some way or other, uses to pass signals to the numerous limbs in the VTuber body. However, something that is quite prominent in paralysis is the compressing of the nerves, which leads to the damaging of the nervous system. Reasonably, on this enticing notion, I'm going on a whim and saying that the reason all 2D VTubers are incomplete quadriplegics in some way or other is related to the coexistence between the two realities. Perhaps, due to them reverting to 2D yet still remaining in 3D, is such a traumatic experience to the body and to the nervous system, resulting in the nerves compressing to fit in the 2D world. Although not really, since as stated previously, everything in the 2D world is normal in the 2D world, and it's just perceived differently between different dimensions. However, it's more so the fact that they are essentially playing limbo between the two dimensions. This is all hypothetical, I understand that. However, I believe the tampering with reality itself is a traumatic experience for the body, and hence the nervous system, thus resulting in quadriplegic incomplete paralysis in all 2D VTubers. It's likely also that VTubers that convert to 3D VTubers are able to move because the dimensions are arguably consistent with their already established dimension. If you guys enjoyed this video, then, and if you have watched this far, then theoretically you do enjoy my videos. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, share this with your neighbor, your high school teacher, and your wife, and I'll be back to answer another question that I'm in scientists can answer.